Hey everyone, and welcome to Newegg TV. My name is Paul, and today I'm going to be doing an unboxing and overview as well as sharing some benchmarks on this new video card from ASUS. This is the ASUS ROG MATRIX HD 7970 Platinum. Now, I did have a talk with JJ from ASUS prior to recording this video. Although he is not here, he is here in spirit, and hopefully I will do a good job covering all the details of this card. But first off, I want to point out there's a couple different versions. We have the MATRIX HD 7970 Platinum right here. There's also a MATRIX HD 7970 non-Platinum edition available. It's clocked a little bit lower, and really the difference between the two, the build is essentially the same. Platinum GPUs are binned higher, so basically when you bin GPUs, you test them, you see which GPUs perform better, because all GPUs are not going to perform equally even if it's the same GPU. The Platinum ones are going to perform better, and the ones in this particular card are going to run at the frequencies established for the overclock settings by ASUS, but they're even going to be able to perform higher than that. So given all the sort of overbuilding that ASUS has done with this card, you're really going to be able to push the HD 7970 way beyond even the stock settings, well, not stock, but overclock settings that ASUS has provided here. Apart from that, you get a free Diablo 3 mouse pads. Nice little add-on right there. This is, of course, an AMD Radeon HD GPU. The code name is the Tahiti XT2, also known as the AMD Radeon HD 7970 GHz edition. So the GHz edition, it runs at 1 gigahertz or 1000 megahertz. This one's actually clocked at 1050 megahertz, and it can do a boost clock up to 1100 megahertz. So majority of the time, as long as you're not getting too hot, you will be running at 1100 megahertz, and that's what I saw in my testing of this card. You also get Infinity technology, so that's for running multiple displays. You can actually push 6 displays from this single video card. You can also do 5 displays from the video card. There's just a BIOS switch you can turn on and off, and I'll show you how that works with the ports on the back of the card. It does support AMD Crossfire technology, so you can set up 2 of these cards together. You could even do more than that, although given the fact that it is a triple slot card for the cooling solution, you would need a motherboard that I've never seen before, or some sort of adapter to run more than 2 of them at once. You get AMD's GCN architecture. That's just the code name for the architecture built into the 7000 series of Radeon HD video cards. And you also get, of course, the AMD Catalyst software. For the benchmarks I ran for this particular card, I'm running the 12.10 benchmarks. There's some 12.11 beta benchmark, or I'm sorry, there's 12.11 beta drivers that are also available right now. I did not run those on this card, but those can give you even better performance than what you will see in my benchmarks today. That said, here's some more specs on the back. That's the GPU. It runs on PCI Express 3.0. Bear in mind, you can also plug this into a motherboard that has PCI Express Gen 2. It's a bandwidth issue. You get also some increased efficiencies from PCI Express Gen 3, but it's really not going to affect your performance all that much if you're running it on a slightly older motherboard or one that doesn't support PCI Express Gen 3. You get 3072 megabytes or 3 gigabytes of GDDR5 memory integrated onto the card. That's running at 1650 megahertz, and it's on a 384-bit bus. It gives you a total bandwidth of 316.8 gigabytes per second. As previously mentioned, the GPU runs at 1050 megahertz. Boost clock will go up to 1100 megahertz, and again, as long as you're not getting hot, it's going to pretty much be running at 1100 megahertz most of the time. 1650 megahertz GDDR5 memory, that gives you an effective memory clock of 6600 megahertz, 384-bit memory interface. Maximum resolution, if you're using the digital outputs, which they're all digital, and if you're not using a VGA converter, is 2560 by 1600. And then if you do use a VGA converter, you can go up to 2048 by 1536. DirectX 11, of course, supported, as well as upcoming 11.1. The output I/O is a single link DVI, dual link DVI, and then you get 4 full-size display ports. Here's some adapters that are included, as well as minimum system requirements. Some little call-outs here on the side that I wanted to point out. Some special features of this card, it being an enthusiast card meant for overclocking and extreme usage. So you get VGA Hotwire support via actual little jumper headers on the board. Well, they're not jumpers, but little headers on the board. So you can actually connect that up to a multimeter to get really accurate voltage readings. You can also use it in tandem with a Rampage 4 Extreme or Maximus 5 Extreme motherboard, and you can connect it directly to the motherboard to set up your readings, and that's just one of those features you get by using all ASUS products. You have VRM overclocking, and that's really a first for video card. This is something that you've probably seen with CPUs and integrated into motherboards, and since ASUS does both, they said, well, why not go ahead and integrate that into the video card as well? So you can overclock your VRM. You actually have loadline calibration, which again is the first video card ever to feature that. That's again something that you frequently see with CPUs and motherboard UEFI settings. But loadline calibration will give you much more stable voltage, especially again if you're going for overclocks. That's going to keep your system more stable and running longer. DIGI plus VRM, you got digital power delivery, 20-phase super alloy power, so there's just a picture of all those SAP chokes that are on there. DirectCU 2 cooling, which was introduced by ASUS a little while back, so you have direct heat pipe, copper heat pipe contact with the GPU. I'm going to show you a more close-up look at that. As we move on with the video, here's a little bit more from the box. I promise I'll get to the video card soon enough, but we have a flap here. So instant voltage adjustment. So this is the TweakIt feature. So actually you have some surface-mounted buttons, little plus and minus buttons you can use to increase or decrease the voltage for flexible overclocking control, and that will increase or decrease your voltage in increments of 0.125 millivolts. You also have an LED load indicator. So the little matrix logo on the side will glow. It will glow green if you're really not putting any load on it at all. It will glow light blue for light loading. Most of the time you'll see it between the darker blue and the purple, which is medium to heavy loading. And then if you run something really extreme, like maybe FurMark or like a GPU virus utility, which I don't recommend running for long periods of time, you can get up to red, which is extreme loading, which means you're really taxing the GPU. You also get the GPU Tweak utility, which is software from ASUS that you can use to closely monitor your temperatures as well as do overclocking things like your core and memory clocks and voltages and fan settings. You can actually control both fans. This video card has 2 fans integrated. You can control each one independently. So you can set up a different RPM for each fan, which just, based on your case configuration and your airflow, you could find that actually changing the speed of one or the other fans might give you better performance or better temperatures. Then finally, as mentioned, DirectCU 2 and DIGI plus VRM, we already mentioned that on the back. So let's get into the box and see what the accessories are. In our accessory box here, oh, check it out. Lots of stuff. So let me take it all out first of all. All right, so there's your Diablo 3 SteelSeries mousepad with the Blizzard and ASUS and SteelSeries logos on it. So nice little mousepad there. Here's an adapter. All right, so this is you'll notice there's no HDMI ports on the card, outputs for display out, but this one will at least let you convert one of your single link. It's got a single link DVI connection right there, and that will convert that to HDMI for an HDMI connection. You also have the ubiquitous DVI to VGA adapter. Please don't use this. And then you also have a crossfire bridge. So if you do want to get 2 of these, use that crossfire bridge to set up a dual video card configuration. Here's a little adapter that, depending on your power supply, you will need a couple 8-pin power connectors for this video card. So this one will take 2 6-pin PCI Express power connectors, convert it to an 8-pin PCI Express power connector. So if you don't have that 8-pin available, as long as you do have the power supply with enough wattage, you can use that to adapt and get your power connected. Here is an ASUS ROG case badge. It's got a little bit of plastic over it to keep it protected, but if you're into case badges, you can put that on your case. Here is your Matrix HD driver and manual, so you get a PDF version of the manual here. You also get drivers. I would recommend going to the ASUS website to download the latest versions of the GPU Tweak software, for example, as well as the AMD website to download the latest Catalyst drivers. They're up to 12.10 again as of the filming of this video, and 12.11 beta drivers are going right in there. And the newer drivers are definitely giving a huge performance boost over the older drivers. So definitely get the latest ones. Here are your VGA Hotwire adapter cables. So the little white ends go into your video card. The other ends here, you can actually, I'll correct myself once I don't know which ends go into the video card and which ends don't because I haven't looked at this directly, but there's your VGA Hotwire cables. This is an ASUS speed setup guide, which is not specific to this particular video card, but if you're not familiar with video cards, then you can use that. If you'd like to know how to install a video card, we also have a how to build a computer video on our YouTube channel you guys can check out. Alright, so as mentioned, this video card's designed for enthusiasts as well as people who just want to game at really high resolutions with lots of eye candy turned on. But this is LN2 MOS heatsink. So this is actually going to be designed to cool your MOSFETs on the card if you are going to be using LN2. Because if you're using LN2, you're probably going to be removing the excellent custom cooler that ASUS has designed, and if you do that, you do still want to cool particular areas of the card apart from the GPU. Specifically the MOSFETs, the power delivery tend to heat up, so they've given you an extra little block right here with some radiators on it, so that will help provide heat dissipation for those, and there's little screws to attach it if you're going to be doing some extreme cooling and doing some LN2. Breaking records. Alright, onto the video card. So here is the Matrix HD 7970 Platinum, and as you can see, this is a substantial card, triple slot card, so you'll notice it will take up 3 PCI Express slots. Bear that in mind when you're choosing your card and your motherboard. You will want, particularly if you're going for Crossfire X configuration with these, you want to make sure you have a triple slot space motherboard. Here's a quick measurement. Measured from the bracket, we have about 11¼ inches. Make sure you give yourself a little bit of space beyond that, but really lengthwise, this is not very long of a card considering some other 12+ inch cards we've seen in the past when you're talking high end. This is a pretty tall card, however, so again, bear in mind, sorry if you can't really see the measurements there, but measured from the top of the PCI bracket, we have another inch, about 1¾ inches of height on the card, spaced out that way. So this shouldn't be an issue in most case configurations, but bear that in mind. It does extend a bit beyond the height of the PCI bracket. That being said, we're going to take a closer look at the card because it's just nice to look at. Very well designed card. So at the top here, you have your shroud, and that's going to be protecting some of the components, also helping direct the airflow down over the 2 masses of aluminum heat sinks that are located below that. I don't know if how well you can see, but right there you have the block that's on top of the GPU. Next to that, you can sort of see peeking out some of the copper heat pipes. I'm actually going to be removing this in just a moment to show you guys a better look at the cooling solution itself as well as the components underneath. But there's a look at that. The fans on the card, which I had intended to measure right before I started filming this, but let me just double check. These are 92mm fans. So you have 2 92mm fans at the top, and the fact that this is a triple slot space card means that you can have more thermal mass, so you can have larger aluminum heat sinks. It also means you can have higher actual fans to direct more air down over those heat sinks, and I can say it's a very effective solution. I've run my whole slew of benchmarks on this card. The hottest it ever got was 68 degrees Celsius, and that's practically chilly for a video card of this caliber that's running at 1100 megahertz. So in most situations, in most computers, when the card's installed, you're going to be looking at that side of it. So you will notice the very nice ASUS Matrix logo, and that's going to be the Matrix logo that lights up depending on the load of the card, so you'll be able to get a nice view of that. And then on the top of the card, they've also provided a nice backplate. The backplate is spaced off a little bit. It's going to be mainly providing some protection for some of the components underneath, but then again, it also gives it a really nice clean look when it's in the case configuration, case and motherboard configuration. In most cases, you have it horizontally like that, and that really gives it a nice clean look. Of course, down at this end, we have the crossfire bridges, and you have 2 connectors and a protective cover that doesn't want to come off. So 2 connectors there. Again, this does support 3-way and 4-way crossfire X, although given the size of the card, you will need a pretty strange configuration to handle that. But in most cases, probably the most folks would be aiming for with this particular card would be 2-way, maybe 3-way crossfire X. But there's your crossfire bridges for that. Let me switch around here to the inputs and outputs, well, I guess outputs here at the back of the card, because ASUS has made sure that you have a very nice wide selection of those. And the fact that it's triple slot gives them a little bit more flexibility to work with. So a lot of the stocks, or the engineering reference, the reference 7970 video cards will use mini DisplayPort connectors. ASUS has gone with all full-size DisplayPort connectors, so you don't need any adapters for that. You also have the two DVI outputs. So this one right here is dual link DVI, and that can do up to 2560 by 1600. This one here is single link DVI. and bear in mind, see the little VGA logo above that. So if you are going to use that VGA adapter, you want to use it with this one. Now, depending on the BIOS switch setting that you use, you can actually do 5-way Eyefinity or 6-way Eyefinity. So you can actually, with 6-way Eyefinity, you can be pushing displays from all 6 of these video outputs. And the way that you control that is via this little switch right there. It's a tiny little switch. There you can see the 2 little configurations. Just switch it back and forth. And in the default setting, it's going to give you 6-way. And then if you switch it over, you can set it up for 5-way. Just bear in mind that because these 2 slots over here that are kind of outlined together, they kind of share some bandwidth. So if you do want to go for 6-way, well, you got the switch right there, so you have the capability to set that up. Let's see, what am I forgetting here? Down at this end of the card, we have some cool stuff to deal with. So let me turn this so you guys can actually see it. All right, so first off, you have that 100% fan button, and that's pretty straightforward. You push the button, and it cranks the fans up to 100%. I find this to be very useful if you're doing benchmarking, because if you're doing benchmarking and you're taking the temperature of the card, and you just run a really intense benchmark, and the GPU has gotten hot, it can take a while to cool off. You simply push the little button, let the fans run 100% speed for a while. It's loud, of course, because the fans are running really fast, but it will cool off the card very quickly. So that's just a nice way to cool down the card. Again, very useful for benchmarking. Besides that, you have these little buttons in there. So you have the plus and minus buttons. Those are the surface-mounted voltage adjustment buttons. Those are the TweakIt, aka, and actually right below that you'll notice the little bank of LEDs, and the LEDs are going to start out green and then they're going to get red as you get towards higher load on the card, or increased voltage, I should say. And then again, those buttons will increase or decrease your voltage in increments of 0.125 millivolts. Next to the 2 plus and minus buttons, you see this little button right there. That's a safe mode button. Safe mode. And if you've ever been nervous about overclocking or tweaking or doing that sort of thing with your hardware, because what if you dial in a setting and then it's locked to that, and then you can't get a picture, and then oh no, you don't know what to do. Well, you can push the safe mode button. Safe mode will essentially revert the card back to default settings. And basically save you if you happen to get into some sort of weird configuration that you can't seem to back out of, particularly if you can't get a picture out of the card. So again, this is just geared towards enthusiasts, people who want to push the card beyond the limits that are already set by ASUS, and just give you the flexibility and the assurance while you're doing that. So I really like the inclusion of the safe mode button right there. We have a few more elements to discuss. All right, so I mentioned already that you have the VGA Hotwire cables right here, and I was right, my initial assumption. So the white little plugs right there can plug into the 3 ports. So you have 2 down here, 1 up there. This is going to give you individual control over PLL. You also have your memory voltage right there. And then up here is your vCore, or your core voltage for the GPU. And then for extreme enthusiasts, you also have some solder points right here that can do some other stuff. So for instance, you have LN2 mode. You can also do some more higher vCore adjustments. This is actually going to disable some of the fail-safes that are available, so they're a little bit harder to access. You actually do need to do a solder to bridge those 2 together. But if you know how to do that, chances are you know what you're doing. That's the assumption here, and that will, by bridging those, you can access some really high-end functions, and again, that's going to be for your extreme benchmarkers, folks who are going to set records and everything. You also have some voltage read points right here, so 3 volt, 12 volt, and ground. So if you got a multimeter, you can connect that right there and get some more granular readings of your voltages. Now, one thing I really like about the ASUS DirectCU 2 cards is they designed this really effective aftermarket cooler, custom cooler for their video cards, and then they also make it really easy to remove. So this only has 4 screws right here, and I've loosened all of them already. And then, ta-da, there we go. Oops, I lost my screws. Okay, so I located my 4 little retention screws there. Now we're going to take a closer look first at the DirectCU 2 cooling solution that ASUS has put together. So again, of course, you can still see the Matrix logo and everything. But from the bottom, we can get a better look at the actual aluminum fin array, as well as the direct copper contact plate. So you have a large copper contact plate right here with a sort of extruded kind of pop-out section in the middle, and that's what makes direct contact with the GPU. You'll notice the heat pipes protruding from one side of that. So this plate actually, via some aluminum as well, does go right up against these fins right here. But you have 2 more pipes that sort of make a little loop down and through, and you can see the two ends protruding right there. So that's going to assist with heat transfer from the base plates out into the aluminum fins, and then you have 3 more protruding out this way, which go into this additional large plate of fins. Now the other point about this is that with these 2 fans providing direct airflow over the majority of the surface of these fins, not only do you have larger thermal mass in the fin array itself, but also you have more airflow over that. And then down on this side, where you're not necessarily pushing air directly over the GPU area, you are pushing air directly over this area, and this is where the all of the VRM, the power delivery for the GPU is located, as well as the memory and the other portions of the card. But apart from the GPU, which heats up pretty significantly, the VRMs can get fairly hot, and ASUS has wanted to make sure that to maintain stability, particularly with overclocking and heavy loads, that you're going to be able to keep not just the GPU cool, but also all of your power delivery components. Now you'll notice there are 2 cables extending from here. I unplugged this one. So this is the one that handles the load lighting for the Matrix logo right there, and then this one you'll notice is a little bit more extensive than your typical fan connectors for a graphics card, and that is again because this can independently control both fans at different RPMs. So next we're going to move on to the actual video card itself. And I've left this one plugged in because that's in there pretty good. But you still should be able to get a better look at everything. So let's start down here. I already kind of pointed out this componentry, but now we can sort of get a better look at it. So there's your plus and minus voltage TweakIt buttons for increasing or decreasing the voltage. Safe mode button. LEDs, there's your 100% fan button. There are, of course, your 2 8-pin power connectors. So again, 2 8-pin power connectors needed in order to power this card, so make sure you have a beefy enough power supply to handle that. And then you'll notice this sort of retention and support plate or metal piece that's sort of extending along the entire length of the card. It's fairly heavy, it's fairly dense, it's performing a couple functions in this particular configuration. So this one is actually providing direct contact with all the MOSFETs on the board that are driving power through the chokes and the capacitors to push power to the GPU. And that's going to provide some extra heat dissipation for that, of course. It's also a substantial bracket right here, and you'll notice it extends all the way up the length of the card, makes contact with the PCI bracket, which is where you're going to have the most support when it's connected to your case. You even got this extra arm up there because with all of this aluminum fins and copper heat pipes and everything, the card is fairly heavy, and they want to make sure that when you have it connected securely to your case, you're not going to have any droop going on, and make sure that the PCB is supported well enough, and also make sure that it's putting more pressure from that weight on the PCI bracket rather than on the PCI Express slot that the card is plugged into. Now, if you are going to be doing some more exotic cooling, if you want to go for LN2, if you're going to be trying to push for some benchmark records or that sort of thing, you might actually be impeded by this plate a little bit, and that's why they included this extra one right here. So you'll notice this is the same design, same layout here, just as this end of that retention and support bracket. So what this is going to do is you remove this one that extends the entire length of the card. You add that one on because you do need that direct contact with the VRMs, with the MOSFETs, in order to keep them cool enough. And then you can remove this existing one, and that will give you more access to this area here where you're probably going to be doing your LN2 cooling and that sort of thing. Also, if you're going to be doing water cooling, for example, you might be installing a custom water block, and this area up here might actually be blocking you from doing that. So very thoughtful of ASUS to include this slightly smaller one that's going to be performing the vital cooling functions, but also give you more access to the rest of the card for some exotic cooling. Now, since ASUS has completely custom designed the PCB for this board, they've taken a lot of factors into consideration. One of those factors is the power plane. So on the bottom here, you'll see an example of the reference HD7970. On the top is the Matrix HD7970, and they've pretty much made a 56% larger power plane. That's the yellow area that you can see right there. That's going to be giving you a couple advantages. It's going to increase the power that's available to your GPUs or your power pool, and also bigger planes result in less depth variance, less voltage drop, more stable overclocking, which leads to lower exhaust and heat overall, and there are some number comparisons right there to prove it. And before we move on to benchmarks, I did want to point out one more thing about the components that ASUS has chosen for this board. We already mentioned the super alloy power chokes that you can see with the SAP logos on them right there. But next to them, you'll notice these sort of gunmetal cylindrical things. Those are capacitors. These are Nichicon GT caps. They're Japanese-made capacitors, and they're pretty much the best capacitors that you can get for this type of implementation. You'll notice that they say, it's upside down, but they say FP10K on them. That's because they're rated for a 10,000 hour lifespan. Another cool thing about them is that they have a wider degree of temperature variance, or that they can accept or operate under. Most caps are rated to operate between -55 and 105 degrees Celsius. These are actually tested between -70 to 125 degrees Celsius, so they can run hotter. They can also run colder, and again, that's just going along with the enthusiast level design here, because if you are going to be doing exotic cooling, these are actually going to get really cold, and you need to make sure that they run even if the temperature is very low. And now we're moving on to the moment you guys have been waiting for, and that is our benchmarks, unless you just jumped past everything and came right to here, in which case I commend you. But forgive me for cheating a little bit real quick, but I did want to mention power draw. For my total system, power draw was 105 watts at idle. Under load at the peak was 340 watts. I am running the 12.10 AMD Catalyst drivers. 12.11 betas are available as of the filming of this video, and those do boost the performance even more, as I've tested with some 7970 cards, although I didn't have quite enough time to do that with this one. But I can say, when you're talking 12.10 drivers, when you're talking single GPU video cards, this card beat every other card I've ever tested when you're talking my non-synthetic benchmarks. So that includes STALKER, Unigine, Metro 2033, AVP, and of course Battlefield 3. So without further ado, here's the benchmarks. We're taking a look at our system configuration. I have a Maximus 5-gene motherboard. That's a Z77 motherboard. It's running an Intel Ivy Bridge Core i5 3570K processor, so that does support PCI Express Gen 3. We have 8 gigabytes of G-Skill Trident X memory running at 2666, and then of course the ASUS Matrix HD 7970 Platinum. So those are the benchmarks. That is going to wrap it up for this video. We hope you have enjoyed. Once again, this has been the ASUS ROG Matrix HD 7970 Platinum video card. I'm Paul with Newegg TV, and if you enjoyed today's video, you can find more on our Newegg YouTube channel. Thanks a lot for watching, and we will see you next time.